William Booth is a lecturer in Latin American history at the University College London. William, thank you so much for joining us. Can I just briefly read out a statement that's reported to be from the Venezuelan government? It's saying that Venezuela rejects, repudiates and denounces before the international community the extremely serious military aggression perpetrated by the current government of the United States. This is apparently the latest reaction we're hearing from the Venezuelan government in response to this early morning series of explosions. What's your understanding of what's happening there?
It's the first time that they've confirmed that there's a military attack on Venezuela. There were rumors of a drone strike last week, but there was very little detail around that. And here, the Venezuelan government has confirmed that there's been attacks not only in Caracas, but in 3 other states of Venezuela this morning. They appear to be, and obviously this is all breaking news, so we don't have too much detail, but they appear to be explosions targeted at specific facilities, at least some military facilities, but there's also reports of attacks on either factories or refineries. So it doesn't appear to be a full-scale land invasion at this stage, but the government has said that these attacks are ongoing. They happened in the night. They happened when people were asleep in Caracas, obviously with the intention of causing confusion and terror, and the government has called people out onto the streets and implemented civil and military defense protocols.
And we know that this is a culmination of what's been happening in recent weeks, a US military build-up in the seas around Venezuela. US forces have said they've been targeting what they say are drug smuggling boats. But what do you believe is the rationale behind what the Trump administration is doing? Are they ultimately seeking regime change here, and to what end?
Yes, absolutely. The drug narrative is, as I've said many times, is nonsense. This is the sole aim, really, of government is regime change, probably with the end of opening up oil and mineral industries to more US companies. And Trump hasn't really left himself much place to go because of the extremely aggressive rhetoric that he's been using over the past few months and the incremental ratcheting up of action and attacks on Venezuela and also on the boats in the Southern Caribbean. Either Trump was going to have to back down or he was going to have to escalate. And this seems to be the next escalation, which is obviously actually targeting sites inside Venezuela, but albeit from the air, as it seems at the moment.
Donald Trump has said in recent weeks that he is essentially a champion of peace, that he is the ultimate peacemaker. He's touted a number of peace agreements in various conflicts, which he says he was responsible for. And now it seems he may be actually starting a conflict in Venezuela right now. Do you believe this is something that he truly believes in, or are there those around him who've been calling for such a military intervention in Venezuela?
Well, I think there's 2 important things there. One thing is, what does Trump actually believe in? And I think it's not very much. I don't think he knows much about Venezuela. I don't think he knows much about Latin America, but he's obviously got some very powerful allies who are whispering in his ear constantly about Cuba, about Venezuela, but also he's got these strong allies in parts of Brazil, in Argentina, in Ecuador and El Salvador, who have a very particular narrative. And one of the narratives that's been around the Latin American right is, over the last few years, is we have to get rid of Maduro in Venezuela. And Trump is obviously somewhat sympathetic to that. It doesn't sit well at all with the other thing that he claims, which is that he's a man of peace, which is obviously nonsense. He's bombed Nigeria at Christmas. He's involving in the bombing of Venezuela now at New Year. These are not consistent with a policy of peace. And as several Latin American leaders have come out and stated, particularly Petro, the Colombian president, Latin American problems really require Latin American solutions, not unilateral military intervention from the the United States, which is only likely to inflame problems not only inside Venezuela, but possibly wider in the region as well.
And we know recently there was the Nobel Peace Prize awarded to a prominent Venezuelan opposition leader who's been forced to live in exile. Venezuela under Nicolas Maduro and his predecessor Hugo Chavez had been criticized for being a non-democratic state, for refusing to hold free and fair elections. What is the current state of democracy in Venezuela right now? And do you believe that it's enough of a reason for a country like the United States to intervene in such a way?
So again, there's two separate things. One thing is the state of democracy in Venezuela, which is, to be honest, it is in a mess. There's been problems around elections for many years, but there's been attempts to intervene in those elections from outside as well. We saw that with the attempted imposition of Juan Guaido a few years ago. And the person that the US has decided is the answer to these problems, Maria Corina Machado, is also calling for the bombing of her own country. So I don't think this is really about democracy in Venezuela. There's plenty of other countries that the United States is perfectly happy to deal with that have flawed democracies. This is particularly about the type of government and resources that Venezuela had.
Now, in terms of the reaction from the Venezuelan people, what do you believe is the mood on the ground there? Not at this particular point, but in the lead up to the apparent attack on the capital. Is there a mood for regime change in Venezuela, do you think?
There might very well be dissatisfaction with the government. It wasn't enough to try and topple the government in 2019. There was no groundswell of opposition really for Guaido. There doesn't seem to be a massive groundswell of support for regime change by force, by imposition. I think I read a poll recently that said only 25% of Venezuelans were in favor of intervention. And I think as soon as something like this happens and bombs start falling, that number will dwindle massively. There isn't this huge popular uprising waiting to happen to overthrow the Maduro government. There is still a strong backing of support for Maduro, albeit not an enormous one. But more importantly, there is a whole bunch of Venezuelans who are primarily focused on day-to-day life and survival and are not thinking that the answer to their problems is a military overthrow of their government.
Okay, William Booth, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you, as always, for joining us on the program.
Thanks.